It's week 7 and we're preparing to do interviews. So interviews are going to be ahead, so I want to start getting ready for those. First step is educating myself. So that involves doing research on subject matters, maybe unique to the person I'm going to interview. Obviously, I'm doing research for the book. That's a big part of it, but I need to be as best educated as I can so I can ask the right questions or maybe know where my gaps in knowledge are and maybe the person I'm interviewing can fill them in. So it's an ongoing process. I can imagine that interviews that I do at the very first stages, I may have to revisit them. I can, ask more questions of these people later as I kind of learn what I may want to know more about along the way. But there's no time like the present. I feel like I need to get started and see where they lay, because obviously each person will have their own information, which may lead me down a new path with what they've shared. So I don't want to wait too long for that. So for my first step is my own education. That comes from the research that I'm doing through old articles and stuff. It includes actually reading some books on some subjects. For Kent State, a big one is May 4th. I have a lot of questions about how the campus bus service was affected by May 4th operations that day specifically, and also the days leading up to and then following that event when they shut down the university. So I'm reading some books about that. And then I'm going to start writing the questions down. I don't want to sit down in front of someone and try to remember, hey, I should ask you about that. So I have a poor memory, and the best way to solve that is to start writing those questions down. So I did that as an exit frame, then come back into frame here. And I just have them on a clipboard here. So there we go. And then I even have a pen where I can start. If I think of something else, I can write it down. So that's a big part of it, is kind of spending some time trying to think about what things to ask. And this way I'm better prepared going into the interview. So actually this is kind of going to serve me longer term too. My goal is I want to kind of have a generic bank of questions that if I can meet someone and I can put together a time to do an interview with them, that I kind of have 20, 30 quick questions about, tell me about your background, your experience with this. And so I kind of have that. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time that I have an interview. And then also I can add on to that anything that's unique to their personal story. If someone was there during a May 4th event, or they're there during the start of the bus service, or other key events, they did charters, or they did they were supervised, they worked in maintenance. Obviously the questions can be geared towards that. So now these initial stages I'm kind of working the generic bank, and then as well as some unique questions as well for some upcoming interviews. And part of it also too is I've printed out some photos. So if an upcoming interview has to deal with somebody who was at May 4th or a part of those events as a driver, what I've done is print out some of the photos that I've been able to get, and just real quickly, not that it really matters, just as on just pieces of paper, just 8.5 by 11. And in this case, you can see here it's some of the National Guardsmen getting off of the Kent State, or one of the Kent State buses. So what's the story behind these? Well, I don't know if people have seen those photos before, so it's going to be something that I can maybe trigger some memories on their end. Oh, I remember that place or those people or that day a little bit better. So that's something else I'm kind of thrown into the mix as well. So equipment for this, really just for research, audio is the key to that. But I don't think that means that you should skimp on that. I've done some initial ones for projects in the past where I didn't have good audio, and man, it was not useful. It was quick and dirty at the time, but going back and trying to review it and realize that what I got was either very difficult to extract the information that I needed, or was completely unusable. There's a lot of background noise. I didn't have the microphone set close enough, so it was just too quiet, whatever it may be. So you really want to be better prepared for that. At least I want to be better prepared for that. So this is kind of my own forewarning to myself. Don't do that again. So two ways of doing that. Obviously, everybody has a phone, and they have recorders with that. You can put it on a speaker, or you can get a standalone recorder, which I've decided to do. here. I don't really care what the brand is, but this particular one, I think you can get it used for like $50 or something like that. There's a million of them out there. So that's going to be a lot more useful, I think. But I will say that even with those, to have some sort of microphone wouldn't hurt. A handheld one, I guess, would be working, but then you're kind of, having to hold it in front of them or hold it in front of yourself. So I had someone else suggest to me a lavalier microphone, which are kind of what you see on TVs, just the little things. And I got 2 of them for like $20 or something like that. So I can have one on myself and one on the subject, and they can both be recorded at the same time. So it's very clear who is saying what, and then I can reference that later. So I've played around with it a little bit. I interviewed one of my kids as a test, and it worked out great. It was a world of difference for $20. And you can plug that easily into a phone or plug it into an audio recorder. Obviously, if you're going to do 2 of them, you can the one I got came with a splitter there. You can put both of them in there. Now, something that I did notice, because I had a little bit of trouble setting this up, is that at least this particular one was kind of geared towards being used with cell phones or maybe other like computers. And I plugged it in, and it didn't work. And I couldn't figure out why. And a little bit of research led me to the answer, which was not all plugs are the same. So this particular plug has, the microphones have 3 little lines on them. I don't know what that means, but it didn't work. And then the kit came with a little converter that had 2 little lines. So doing that, plugging that in between the microphone and my recorder, all of a sudden then it worked. So there's a lesson to be learned, is make sure that you know how your equipment works. But anyway, so that's all it took. So I can't recommend this enough as a cheap little thing of recording. And it came with tons of cable. I could probably sit 20 foot away from somebody and still be able to sit comfortably and not be, tethered to them tightly by some shorter cord. But one thing that I'm kind of interested in doing is also recording these interviews for posterity, whether that's share them on YouTube or something long term, so a future historian can maybe find an interview. Not quite sure how that's going to go, but the key is I can record them initially and make that decision later. So if all I want is the audio, I have it, or if I want to have the video, then I have that as well. So I'm kind of going at this in kind of a different way. But with that being said, another thing that's going to be kind of unique to going down that path is that I need to have a release. So similar to having a photo release, if someone's going to give me a photo that I can use in the book, I have to have a release for that to give to the publisher. And same thing for having their permission to put it on YouTube, or I'm also looking into making an interview donation to the Kent State Special Collection so they can have it in their archives for future generations. And for their acceptance, they're going to need some sort of release as well. So I'm going to have that put together, and then I can have the subjects sign it. If they're interested, obviously they don't want to. I still want to record it for the sake of research for this book. But if they're willing to be a part of something else, then I kind of have some more of those T's crossed and I's dotted type of thing. So that's going to be important as well. So I happen to be working with a TV producer for something else that's, it's not really related with writing a book, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. So since I want to include video with these interviews, so I asked him if he had any pointers for that, and he had a couple things to offer, which I found helpful. So he said, obviously, because it's going to be video, it's good to have a good high definition camera. Now, he did say 4K is not a requirement, so thankfully that makes things cheaper, just to have a normal high def camera rather than kind of going to the full 4K way. Always use a tripod, so thankfully I already have a tripod, so that'll be nice. So this way, you're not using up some of your own attention trying to hold a camera, but also then this way the camera's steady. You set it up, and this way it's not moving around or stuff during the interview. And And he said too, audio is critical, and that's where I learned about using a lavalier mic or anything else like that. You want to have good audio because that can obviously ruin the best of videos if you can't hear it or it just sounds awful. Lighting was a key as well. Isn't so much that you need to have your own lighting, that you're going to bring in lights to light up the interview. Just make sure that you don't have them backlit, that they don't have a window to behind them or anything like that. So it's more of just a setup in the environment. And then speaking of environment too, that's a big thing, was turn off as many things as possible. If it's fans or air conditioners, anything that's going to make a background hum, you know, have kids and dogs out of the room so they're not interfering with it. So I thought that was a good short list of things to keep in mind. Again, I'll probably learn as I go along the way here with hopefully future interviews that what works for me or what doesn't work. And there's only one way to find out, and that's by doing. So that's kind of it. So this is preparing for interviews. I should have one hopefully next week if schedules permit. And then at that point, I'll have an idea which of these things worked, hopefully all of them, and then I'm better prepared for interviews down the road. So that's really it for week 7, going to week 8, which will be the end of the second month, and I'm looking forward to that. And that's it for now. All right, bye.